اوكي. مرحبا جميعا، يعطيكم العافيه. شكرا لحضوركم. عندنا في عنا عدد كويس حاليا، والعدد عم بيزيد، فخلينا نستفيد من الوقت ونبلش. كبدايه بتمنى من الجميع انه يحط المايك اون ميوت عشان ما نعمل باك جراوند نويز. و if you want to share your picture and the video that's fine. المحاضرة اليوم راح تكون عن research in the US. How to start. We get a lot of questions على الجاب Facebook group, على private messages, and me personally and all of the other people here. إنه أنا بدي أعمل research in the US. كيف أبلش؟ من وين أبلش؟ شو لازم أعمل؟ حاليا مع الماتش الامور شوي عم بتكون شوي اصعب، او more complicated I shall say. هل لازم اعمل ريسيرش ولا لا؟ وفي اسئله كثير اللي هي كمان a lot of challenges اللي هي الفيزا issue, visa sponsorship, not paid versus unpaid. I don't really have a lot of research experience. Do I really have to have one? probably the most important question راح يكون اللي هو هل الريسيرش ضروري؟ يعني do I have to do research in the US to get match or not? So hopefully إنه نقدر يعني نغطي هاي الأسئلة بهاي الويبينار، أو نعطيكم يعني نشارك معكم خبراتنا. ما يعني كل الناس اللي راح يحكوا اليوم عندهم they have a research background، و I'm sure يعني راح تكون very beneficial for you إن شاء الله. احنا معنا اليوم صراحه نخبه من الدكاتره الاردنيين والفلسطينيين very active. و يعني بترك لهم المجال هم يعرفوا عن حالهم. ممكن نبلش بالدكتور احمد مصري. احمد بعد.
شكرا for having me here. انا اسمي احمد مصري، انا كارديولوجيست. انا تربيت في نابلس، بعديها عملت ميديكال سكول في جاست، وعلى طول بعديها طلعت على امريكا. عملت ماي ريزيدنسي بكليفلاند كلينيك، عملت ماي كارديولوجي كاردياك ايميجينج ماسترز ديجري، وتي 32 ريسيرش فيلوشيب كلهم في بيتسبرغ. وحاليا انا في جامعه اسمها Oregon Health and Science University. I do a lot of things, unusual practice. I focus on rare cardiac diseases. أنا ما بشوف أي شيء general cardiology. I only see cardiomyopathies, genetic cardiomyopathies و infiltrative cardiomyopathies. I spend most of my time, half of my time doing research, half of my time doing clinical work. The half of my time doing research, I have 3 programs, clinical trials, sponsored typically by outsiders. I have my own translational clinical and imaging research program. Happy to be here.
شكرا كثير لك احمد. عبد الله.
مساء الخير لكل حدا بالاردن، وصباح الخير لجامعه امريكا. انا اسمي عبد الله الزغل، خريج العلوم والتكنولوجيا 2015. تخرجت من الأردن، عملت امتيازي بالأردن. عملت سنة واحدة إقامة بس بالأردن، كانت أشعة. بعدين طلعت على أمريكا، عملت سنتين ريسيرش. بعدين هلا استشفيت أنا PGY3 سنة ثانية أشعة في جونز هوبكنز. هاي just a very brief introduction. بتخيل بعدين رح نحكي عن الexperiences، مش هيك رامي؟ So that's it. وصراحة أنا مبسوط يعني هلا رقم 93 which is very impressive صراحة. عدد الحاضرين يعني منيح إنه هيك عدد طلاب interested يعرفوا عن research وعن كيف تطلع على أمريكا وهالقصص.
تمام. شكرا كثير لك عبد الله، شكرا لوجودك معنا. رجاء كيفك؟
يعطيكم العافية وشكرا رامي على الاستضافة. أنا رجا زغلول، تخرجت من الجامعة الأردنية بال 2016 وإجيت على طول على أمريكا بعد ما عملت امتياز بال 2017 على واشنطن دي سي. عملت ريزيدنسي بميد ستار بدي سي، بعدين عملت سنة تشيف ريزيدنت، بعدين هلا أنا فيرست يير كارديولوجي فيلو بواشيو بسانت لويس. I'm happy to share my experience with you as a recent resident who I don't have as much experience as the people here on the group, but I can share my experience with you as a resident who done some research.
Yeah, definitely. شكرا لك رجا وشكرا لوجودك معنا. يعني ال scope of this lecture is gonna go beyond just doing research for the sake of residency. We're gonna try to change this, like, narrative that yeah, I want to do research and then I'm gonna get residency, and then after that I'm not gonna do research at all. So we're gonna try to kind of like implement this idea that research could be like a long-term investment in residency, fellowship, and even after that in a future career. بالنسبة لي أنا personally بس briefly بعرف عن حالي. رامي الأحمد، خريج جامعة علوم والتكنولوجيا 2010. عملت سنة الامتياز، بعدين طلعت على University of California, Irvine. I did a basic research experience actually, the basic transplantation and diabetes. بعدين رجعت على الأردن، اشتغلت مركز حسين. I matched in internal medicine بنيو جيرسي سيرن هول. وبعد هيك عملت I'm doing I did my waiver ب Yale University, been working actively on research projects on the side. And then next year I'm going to start my fellowship in pulmonary critical care. So I have like different research experience, basic, clinical, and so I can weigh in and I can share my experience later. So كبداية بجوز ممكن نبلش باللي هو السؤال. أحمد وعبد الله وراجع إنه share with us اللي هي your research experience. How much you think it was beneficial, and what was the challenges that you faced during that experience?
I can start. أنا تربيت زيكم في فلسطين والأردن. ما عمري فكرت لا في الريسيرش ولا حتى عرف ولا حتى سمعت باسم الريسيرش ولا abstract ولا manuscript when I was in Jordan. I think you guys now are much more sophisticated من احنا زي ما كنا زمان. يعني هذا حكي من 16 17 سنة. الإنترنت كانت very limited والresources كانت very limited at the time. And the reason why I went into research لأنه كنت في كليفلاند بعمل rotation as a resident sorry as a medical student, وتعرفت على واحد هناك. He was a very aggressive guy in research. كان عندي مشاكل بالفيزا when I was a student. So I thought I wanted a way مش إني أحسن السي في تبعتي. I wanted a way to be in the US وقت الماتش so that I don't surrender حياتي للفيزا officer. Well, this is exactly what I did. I'm really thankful that I thought of this لأنه it happened again. My research visa got stuck for such a long time. بالأخير طلعت لي وجيت وعملت لي كم شهر research ومتشت I stayed here يعني until I got my green card for a long time. I went into this not knowing what it is وإيش بدي منه يعني. But the bottom line is what happened إنه I met somebody who shares my personality, being aggressive in the sense of I'm not gonna wait 2-3 years to get to see the product of my work. I want to do some work and get the product right now. This is how you build a legacy. Essentially, what happened in يعني I get a project, I work day and night on it, I finish it, I move to the next project. وأولها زي ما الكل بيعمل يعني it was just more or less عشان أحسن السي في تبعتي. But it only took me 3-4 months to start actually liking it. It's a lot of work. I'm not gonna make it rosy يعني it's less work when you're not doing training. بس أنا عملت بس 6 شهور without being a trainee. بس خلال my training 3 years of internal medicine residency, which was really not easy in Cleveland at the time. It was really a lot of work. ومع هيك ضليتني أشتغل بالresearch. And I agree with Rami, you have to think about this from a career perspective. It is not about your next step in life. It's not about you want to do research عشان تيجي للمرحلة الثانية. What ended up happening إنه الريسيرش ساعدني بكل شيء بحياتي، من أعرف أكتب أحسن، أعرف أحكي أحسن، أتعلم طب أكثر، أعرف عن مرضاي أكثر. بعدين it afforded me amazing fellowship opportunities. لو ما عملتش research بحياتي ما بحلم فيها كنت. after that I continued to do more and more research.
ابعث لي سؤال بالانجليزي وابعث لي شو ما بدي اسمع.
شو؟
شباب رجاء اللي everyone to mute his mic please.
Yeah. واللي صار انه it became my career. يعني انا كل شغلي هلا فعليا my clinical work fits into my research work or my research fits into my clinical work. ف it's not for everybody. But I think one takeaway from all of this انه one, you have to keep an open mind. You have to work hard when you sign up for something. It shouldn't be just thought of as something that you want to do for the next step. Now you're going to hear a lot of more recent stories من الناس اللي معنا. But I know for a fact, being on the other side, things are much more difficult هلا. You have to work much harder to get into a position for doing research. There are more creative ways nowadays of doing it, but COVID unfortunately complicated things a lot. I'll stop here, but I'm sure we can address the other stuff in later on.
شكرا كثير لك أحمد. It's impressive إنك يعني sometimes as يعني زي ما حكينا إنه الواحد ممكن بده يعمل research just for the sake of research and then ممكن واحد يعني يكتشف إنه this is exactly where I want to be in the future and this is exactly what happened to you. Abdullah, you want to share your experience with us?
بس قبل ما ابلش رجا ودى مسج انه اتوقع في ليميت للبارتيسيبنتس وصل لل100 ف they disconnected رجا اذا بتقدر ترجعوا على الميتينج.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll work on that.
اوكي باختصار زي ما حكى احمد انا كنت طالب في العلوم والتكنولوجيا، ما كان عندي اي خبره بالريسيرش، ما كنت اعرف حتى الفرق بين الابستراكت والارتيكل والريفيو ارتيكل وكل هالحكي. بس كان عندي هدف انه يعني كنت ناوي اني بدي اطلع على امريكا للاختصاص بغض النظر عن التخصص. بالسنه الاخيره وانا سنه سادسه عملت electives، واحد انستيجيا واحد باطني. بسنه الامتياز عملته بالملك المؤسس. على ايامنا كان لسه في شويه flexibility، فكان عندي flexibility بالدوام، فكان عندي وقت اني ادرس. ما بعرف كيف الامور هلا صارت. بنص الامتياز كنت على اساس اني اخلص امتحاناتي وسنه اولى اعملها يا بالحسين يا بالملك المؤسس وامتش وانا سنه اولى اقامه بالاردن. بعدين بلشت اسمع انه هلا انا كنت حابب اوريدي اشعه، بس كنت اتوقع انه الاشعه صعبه والكل يحكي لي لا انسى وكذا ومش هاي. بس صرت اسمع انه لا، في ناس بتطلع بتحصل اشعه، حتى في اردنيين كانوا قبلي اكبر مني بسنه وسنتين وثلاث كلياتهم كانوا يمتشوا اشعه. فتشجعت اني ادور على بوزيشن ريسيرش بالاول. بلشت الطريقه اللي هي يمكن اغلب طريقه بتسمعوها الناس تحكي عنها، اللي هي انه بتكتب ايميل بتوديه ل فاكولتي لجامعه معينه وبتستنى بتتامل انه حدا يرد عليك. كنت على مدى 3-4 أشهر خلال السنه الاولى اللي كنت فيها مقيم اشعه بالاردن، كل يوم افوت على كليه طب معينه، امسك القسم واودي لهم دكتور، بس طبعا اضبط الايميل، اغير الاختصاص اللي مثلا اختصاصه بودي ايميجينج اغيرها عن الام اس كي ايميجينج. واكيد صار معي اغلاط انه امرار اودي اسم الدكتور نفسه لدكتور غلط. بتصير الاغلاط هاي لانه كان الواحد بالاخر بتصفي وتبعث مئات الايميلات، فهاي الاخطاء راح تصير مهما نحكي حاول تظبط الايميل وكذا الا ما تغلط لك كم ايميل every now and then. اغلب اللي كنت اودي لهم خليني احكي 90% ما يردوا. اللي يرد دائما السؤال الاول كيف بدك تيجي على امريكا؟ معك جرين كارد او جنسيه؟ هل تحتاج فيزا سبونسرشيب؟ لما احكي لهم بحتاج فيزا سبونسرشيب كمان 3/4 يختفوا، ابطل اسمع منهم. لحد ما بالاخر واحد دكتور رد علي وقال لي اوكي وتمام وانا بعمل لك فيزا سبونسرشيب، مع انه ما كان عندي اي ريسيرش اكسبيرينس ولا كنت بعرف شيء. فهاي شويه بس عشان ابين لكم انه ما في داعي تكون خبير ريسيرش لحتى تيجي، ولو انه اكيد مهم انه يكون عندك ريسيرش اكسبيرينس بالاردن او يكون عندك نوليدج او ببليكيشنز بشكل عام. يعني اي شيء احسن من ولا شيء. جيت عملت 2 سنين ريسيرش بفيلادلفيا يونيفرسيتي بنسلفانيا. اول شيء كنت على اساس اجي اعمل سنه ريسيرش واقدم على الماتش. اول ما وصلت بجولاي، كان التقديم الابلكيشنز بسبتمبر، فيعني حرفيا معي بس شهرين لاعمل ريسيرش. فحسيت انه لو بدي اقدم الابلكيشن تبعي بسبتمبر السي في تبعتي راح تكون فاضي. الشيء الوحيد اللي راح اضيفه انه انا ريسيرش فيلو، اما ما عندي لا بابليكيشنز ولا كونكشنز ولا شيء غير اني انا بس كلمه ريسيرش فيلو. فحكيت مع الاتندنج تبعي قلت له اعمل سنه ولا سنتين، وحكينا بالمواضيع وكذا. بالاخير حكى لي اغلب اللي بيجوا بيشتغلوا معي بعده يا سنتين يا ثلاث، وانه اذا بتضل معي سنتين انه امورك بتكون كويسه وكذا ومن الحكي، وطمني وكذا. قلت له خلص بقعد سنتين. لكن عملت السنه، ضلت توتال سنتين. فلما قدمت بسبتمبر السنه اللي بعديها كنت حوالي سنه وثلاث اشهر عامل ريسيرش. كان عندي عدد منيح من الببليكيشنز، عدد منيح من الابستراكتس، كونفرنس برزنتيشنز. كنت حتى يعني الاتندنج اللي كنت اشتغل معه، اروح معه زيارات على جامعات، على كونفرنسز، يعرفني. كل هاي الشغلات هاي اللي هي بنسميها building a connection. الكونكشن مش يعني واسطه بالمفهوم الاردني، انه فلان قرابتي او صاحبي او بعرف فلان بدحش فلان. لا، الكونكشنز بتنبنى بامريكا عن طريق شغلك، الناس اللي بتتعرف عليها، الناس اللي بتشوف شغلك وبهمهم انه يضلوا على كونكشن معك، عشان بيشوفوا انه والله هذا الشخص منيح، اذا بشتغل معه بالمستقبل راح نفيد، راح هو يفيدني وانا افيده. فبالسنه الثانيه قدمت على الماتش ومتشت الحمد لله. هاي هيك باختصار شديد. وكمان زي ما حكوا رامي واحمد، انه الريسيرش مش بس عشان الاقامه. في ناس مثلا بيحكي لك طب انا بدي اعمل التخصص المعين، هل مستاهل اني اعمل ريسيرش؟ اكيد الريسيرش مش ضروره 100%. في ناس كثير بتمتش حتى بجراحه عامه، باشعه، بباطني، بمتشوا بدون ريسيرش. بس هي دائما اضافه للابلكيشن تبعك، بيساعدك تمتش ممكن بتخصص شوي اكثر كومبetitive، او بمستشفى احسن او بجامعه احسن. يساعدك للفellowship تبعتك. باي ذا تايم بتبلش الفellowship ابلكيشن اوريدي انت بتكون عامل كونكشنز وعامل سي في وببليكيشنز وريسيرش. كمان بتساعدك لامور اخرى زي ما حكى احمد، ممكن عن طريق الجرين كارد وهي الشغلات كلياتها ما كنا انا شخصيا ما كنت عارف عنها غير لما اجيت على امريكا. ففي كثير ابواب بتفتح لك اياها الريسيرش، ولكن بنفس الوقت مش ضروره، مش يعني الزاميه، وممكن تيجي تمتش وتعمل فellowship ممتازه وتعمل كارير ممتازه بدون ريسيرش. مش شيء ضروري، ولكن شيء بفيدك جدا جدا، بيفتح لك ابواب كبيره.
شكرا كثير لك عبد الله. انا I can share my experience هلا، اللي هي انا بعد التخرج انا عملت ستيب 1 بسنه خامسه، وكان ايامها انه to do step 1 بايام الدراسه كان شوي شيء صعب، not very usual مش زي هلا يعني. فكانت يعني العلامه is not as expected، ف it was kind of like a weakness point in my application. So I thought probably I should do research to improve my CV. So بلشت ادور زي عبد الله، ابعت ايميلات until I got a reply from someone University of California Irvine. Yeah, I'm willing to take you. It's going to be unpaid, but maybe paid after 6 months. And it was a basic research experience, and this is probably that was my mistake. وغلط يعني في غلط انه probably انه كنت انا desperate, I just want to go anywhere بدون ما اطلع يعني take it more deeply, او انه اطلع more to the future and how much this person will help me. First of all كان هو PhD, he was not MD. وثاني شيء was a basic research experience. هلا basic research experience by itself doesn't necessarily انها تكون really bad. It's different, خصوصا إلنا لأنه إحنا we have zero exposure للبيسك ريسيرش. حتى البيسك اللي هو basic class بالبيسك years of the medical school we barely get exposed to anything. أكيد بجوز هلا الوضع زي أول إذا مش أسوأ، إنه بنكون في 40 واحد باللاب فوق بعض بيطلعوا على الإكسبيرمنت. it was a different experience. It was hard to adjust. I did not really اللي هو living condition، كنت ساكن بعيد تقريبا almost ساعة عن مكان الجامعة، فاضطر اخذ مواصلات takes me like about 2 hours. that was it was different experience definitely. And in the lab itself, basic research lab, you have to do experiment on animals, you have to do training on that. Sometimes you do cell experiment, and and this is like also one of the things that you should think carefully about when you think about basic research experience, that a lot of time actually to be productive, it takes a lot of time, especially if you want to be like have a good, really good product, I mean, good research articles and abstracts. So it took a lot of time, to get something done. A lot of logistics that you has to be, taken. ف يعني بالملخص, basic research experience, unless you're really interested in it, I don't really advise anyone to go into it. بعدين لما رجعت الأردن, okay, I don't want to do basic research lab. اشتغلت مركز الحسين, وفي ناس مركز الحسين actually بالأردن بيشتغلوا research, I was able actually to do a paper بمركز الحسين. وبعد هيك بالريزنسي يعني نوعا ما on abstract, now بيال الموضوع شوي مختلف, في resources وفي mentors, so it's much easier. So bottom line is, I guess probably you have to do your homework before you do go for anything. مش إنه أي واحد يعني بيقبل إنك أنت تيجي عنده to go for it. هلا إحنا to move forward. Raja, I think he's back.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, Raja, if you want to share your experience with us, the research experience you had in the residency, before we move on.
Sure, yeah. On a little bit of a different story, ما عملت any dedicated experience in research. I finished all my exams in my 6th year بالجامعة. Step 1, Step 2 CS in سنة سادسة. I matched during الامتياز, who started right after الامتياز بالresidency. I had a little bit of experience بالجامعة الأردنية. في منكم بيعرف الدكتور أيمن عارف. He's very active بالresearch, he mentored me really well لما كنت بالجامعة. So I had basic experience in terms of كيف تعمل scientific writing basics, how to structure a manuscript. We published 1 or 2 papers with him. And then بالresidency, I tried to get connected early on مع mentors. بتذكر we had a block 0, which is an introduction. I knew أنا بدي أعمل cardiology, so I tried to connect مع a cardiologist who does cardio-oncology research. And then يعني I didn't know anything about what she's doing, but it's all about showing interest. يعني بتذكر بحكي للناس زي فيلم Shawshank Redemption, you have to keep sending letters and emails multiple times and keep nagging. You might not get anything in the first email or second email, but لما يشوفوا إن أنت you're insistent, راح يعطوك opportunities. وأهم شيء when you get an opportunity to deliver and to show that you're dedicated. So during residency, I was able to do stuff that's mostly outcomes-based research. It wasn't anything basic or translational, or it was mostly like simple clinical questions using a database or using a retrospective chart review من المستشفى. These types of research are things you can do during residency. I think we're going to talk more later on different types of research that you can and can't do. But my advice is try to go for something that, one, you know that you can deliver, and you know that you can finish in a certain time period, especially if you're doing it in your 2 or 3 years of residency and you want to use it for your fellowship. Another advice I found helpful during residency is know your residency really well and know كيف الستراكشر تبع البلوكس تبعونك بيشتغلوا. So there's always blocks that will be very open or blocks that will be very busy. We try to be ready with like your IRB and everything ready to go once you're on a light block so that you can work on those. And forget about the idea that أنا بدي أعمل research عشان to get a residency or to get a fellowship, because I think if you do it with this idea in mind, راح تكون كتير a struggle for you. راح تكون أنت عم تزهق وأنت عم تشتغل. Move away from the idea of أنا بدي أعمل research just to match into doing something that I actually like and enjoy. And once you get to that point, doing research becomes much more enjoyable and easier. If you're just doing things to match, there's, I think, in my opinion, much better investments of a 1 year that will get you better spots. Doing a chief resident is one of them. Like if you do a chief resident for 1 year versus if you do a year and you don't publish, it's probably a much better investment of your time. But this is just to tell you, don't do research just in an idea to match. Do it because you like it. It will help you match. just move away from the idea of I'm doing it just to match.
طيب هلا to move forward and I'm gonna go over like kind of the most common questions that we usually get asked and then بعد هيك any of the audience if they have any questions feel free to ask through the chat or the mic or if you want to share your video as well. I'm gonna ask the question Ahmed, Abdullah or Raja, if you want to jump in, any one of you can please comment. Here, I think the first question is how important is research? Do we have to do that or not to match? Probably Raja, you just elaborated a bit on that, but maybe we can discuss more. Is research important?
Yeah, I think it's definitely important. One, it depends on what are you trying to match in. So residencies and fellowships see very different variability in how competitive the specialty is. Obviously, the more competitive means في limited spots for the number of applicants. So the more applicants for a lower amount of spots بتكون more competitive. كل ما بيكون في spots أكتر من عدد applicants بيكون less competitive. So على أي شيء more competitive you need to have a CV that's better than حد تاني. So it's definitely important, but it's not 100% requirement. زي ما كنت أحكي في كتير أشياء that can set you apart other than just doing research. So doing additional degrees, doing a chief resident is something كتير important for matching in fellowship, for example, that can give you an edge. Having just like volunteer work or clinical experience that's outside of the ordinary can give you an edge. But research is definitely needed, but it's not the only thing. If you're doing it just for that purpose, you can think of other things that can help as well.
So, can you please mute if you're not speaking? أي حدا ما بيحكي عم حط mute. I just want to take it one step back لأنه I saw some questions in the chat. الناس تسأل عن types of research, and I think it's important to lay this out قبل ما نكمل conversation لأنه I think it's pertinent. هلا in general, if you think about types of research, you have something that is hardcore basic science developmental biology, where you're actually asking questions at the cellular level or at the molecular level that have no direct translation to humans directly. Those projects typically are long, they're hard to do, they're typically run by PhD only people. So you have two kinds of researchers in the United States, PhD or MD, PhD or MD. And so typically it's better to line up with an MD if you don't want to do a couple of years of research. The second type of research is early translational or late translational, which means you do basic research using either blood products, samples, or tissues and whatnot, but there is direct translation to humans or animal models that resemble human disease. And those are important too. لأنهم typically you produce something a little bit quicker, or you know how to talk about your research easier because you're a physician, you're a medical student, so you are able to connect the research with with what you've been doing with the disease also. The third type is things that have to do with humans, period. So they're not basic research, they're what termed clinical research. And with the clinical research, you can have a couple of different options. One is pure outcomes research, where you have an already collected database, or you collect some data and you do some quick analysis and you show that groups are different, whatever. There is another type, which is imaging-based outcomes research, where you either analyze images yourself and then collect data and do something, or you use a novel software to do something with images. There is another type, which is statistical, analysis-based research, where you can, a lot of you are aware of the meta-analysis and whatnot. These all are falling out of favor, but these are a type of research where you can also just do things using public data. And then finally, there are clinical trials, but the clinical trials are such an advanced stage that none of the med student residents should ever think about being part of, because you'll never have your name on anything and you're never going to be able to show productivity for what you've been doing. This is just to put out the types of research that people can do. I think the question is, do I need to do research, or how long do I need to do it for? has to do with your own CV and what your goals are in life. If you have very limited financial resources and you just want to come to any program in the United States for any specialty, just to be part of the system and get into it, you might not necessarily need research. If you have strong CV otherwise, meaning scores, you did well in medical school, you're well spoken, you know how to write a good personal statement, you know how to interview well. If you have a deficiency in your CV, something has to give. صح? Yani you can't just apply to 200 programs and say, I didn't get interviews. That doesn't matter the number of programs. If you have a deficiency, you're going to be filtered out. And so that also comes to the point that Abdullah made. Being in a research position means nothing on its own. You have to show that you are doing something, that you are producing something, or that this position is actually allowing you to grow as a human, as a physician, as a researcher. It gives you a lot to talk about also during the interview, instead of just saying, well, I finished high school, I went to medical school, and then I'm here today. So you have a lot more things to talk about during your interview. In general, this July to September pattern of finding a position does not work. I can tell you for a fact it doesn't work. In the US, we don't live in silos. I have no control over who gets an interview. I have no control over who matches. I even have no control over who I can hire sometimes, because there's a fair system here where if I have to recommend somebody, there has to be a reason why this person is being recommended. And even after that, there is a committee that makes decisions. It's not just me. And so that's how you think about it. And I know it's hard upfront to think about it, but that's how you need to think about it. ليش أنا بدي أعمل research? For how long? It's an investment. It's not a waste of time. And then if you can learn some skills, even from Jordan or from, I don't know, like visiting, even, people have done crazy things such as going to India or going to Germany, just to learn some basic skills or some research skills. When they apply to a position, they say, I know how to do quantitative PCR, I know how to do blood work, I know how to isolate DNA or RNA. These things can also at least get you through the door if need be. But the bottom line is you have to think about what you already have, what you want to achieve, and think about the journey in between. But in general, again, just being in a position to say I'm a research fellow does not add anything to your CV on its own.
بس بدي أعلق في سؤال على paid or unpaid. هلا
عبد الله يا سوري دكتور، بس هاي راح تكون يعني نقطة لحالها. I want to know you want to have a comment about it now. I would add something إنه ما بعرف إذا الموجودين هون already قدموا على الماتش أو they are future applicant. They just want to see exactly if doing the research is going to be helpful. You want to think if you want to. So first of all, for the match, you have to take a look to the whole picture rather than just one particular part of it. So when programs they receive the applications, they have there are many things that you look for: scores, your research experience, your electives, your letter of recommendations, personal statement, all of that. So research is part of this. And again, as my colleague said, the research experience by itself is not by itself that was going to decide you're going to match or not. They take the overall picture collectively. So that's number one. Number two is for research to be important in your CV or in your resume to match, if that's your goal. Again, you have to create the environment that will make you succeed, which means that publication connection, as like Abdullah said. And the other thing is research, especially when you apply for academic programs, right? And then you have research experience, they will say, okay, all the programs they will think in a way that how this person can be beneficial to the program, how easy for us to train him, at the same time get something out of him. So if you have a good research experience with good publications, this means that probably you're going to succeed because they see your product. So again, so the bottom line, the answer for this question probably is going to be, it depends on your goal, depends on your situation, and it depends also where you're applying to. Are you aiming for these like Ivy League programs, or are you just applying, or like these like very, very competitive like kind of residencies like surgeries or orthopedics that probably nobody from the outside the US schools will give them. So we'll move forward to the next question, which is a very, very common question that we usually get, how to start. I'm a fresh graduate. I want to start, I'm really interested in research to improve my CV. Also, like I want to get residency in the US, all this stuff, and how to start. إذا حدا بده start, answering this question.
أنا أقدر أحكي هلا. في كتير بشوف أسئلة على الجروب الجي اي بي إنه is it worth it أعمل ريسيرش بالأردن؟ إذا البيبر published مع جروب بالأردن هل بيحتسب لها قيمة بأمريكا؟ كل إشي له قيمة، أي إشي أحسن من ولا إشي. أي ريسيرش أو بروجكت تشتغل عليه سواء أنت بالأردن أو بأمريكا كله بنحط على السي في تاعتك. إذا أنت فريش جراجويت وما عندك أي اكسبيرينس سنة الامتياز، بتخيل البرايورتي دائما لازم تكون للدراسة. هلا مع الستيب 1 صار باس اور فيل، مش عارف صراحة كيف الأمور رح تتغير، فبدك بجوز just باس ستيب 1 وبعدين ركز على ستيب 2. إذا عندك وقت فراغ وأنت بالأردن مش غلط تشبك حالك مع ناس بالأردن وتحط اسمك على at least one publication أو abstract هون ولا هناك ولا حيلا conference أو أي شيء. الخطوة الثانية لتحصل بوزيشن، زي ما حكيت أنا اتبعت طريقة الإيميلات بس إيميلات للكل وعلى أمل إنه حدا يرد. في كمان شغلة تانية إنه إذا أنت بتعرف شخص أو أنت بتعرفي شخص بأمريكا بيشتغلوا ريسيرش أكبر منك ومتشوا، بالعادة مثلا اللابس بيكون فيها عدد معين من الريسيرشرز، كل سنة بيمتش 3-4 منهم، بيعبوا السنة اللي بعديها بيعبوا ناس، وهاي كمان طريقة. هاي أغلب الطرق. في شغلة أنا لما كنت أنا ريسيرش فيلو شفتها، بعض الابليكنتس اللي بيكون أو الميديكال ستودنتس الجراجويتس اللي بيكون عندهم either جرين كارد أو جنسية، يعني باختصار ما بيحتاجوا فيزا، بيكون اوريدي موجود بأمريكا. فأنت مثلا let's say أنت بنيويورك وبتبعت إيميل لدكتور بنيويورك تحكي له أنا انترستد بالريسيرش تبعك، أو أنا اوريدي بنيويورك وأنت بتبعت لشخص بنيويورك، احتمالية إنه يحكي لك أوكي مر علي هالأسبوع على المكتب خلينا نحكي، عالية جدا 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 مقارنة بإنك تكون في الأردن وتحكي له أنا معي جنسية أو جرين كارد وما بحتاج فيزا. فأنا أتليست بعرف شخص واحد عمل هاي الطريقة، كان عندنا بيونيفرسيتي بنسلفانيا، ودى إيميل للمنتور حكى له حرفيا أنا بالمدينة وأنا ما بحتاج أي شيء وكذا كذا، بتحب أشوفك هاي الأسبوع. يعني بتسهل الطريق على الشخص اللي بدك تقابله. ففي كثير طرق. في كمان بعرف structured fellowships، بالعادة هاي بعرف بتخيل اللي كان فيها أسيد كان المفروض يكون معنا مثلا I think إنها surgery research fellowship في ماس جنرال. هاي إنه بتكون structured، كل سنة بيعملوا زي it's more formal إنه application و interviews وبيختاروا شخص من مجموعة كبيرة. هاي يعني more structured way of getting a research position. ففي كتير طرق، و زي ما بيحكوا كل الطرق تؤدي إلى روما. يعني في يا إما عشوائي، يا إما عن طريق connection، يا إما عن طريق تقدم على job position. هاي هيك يعني باختصار.
شكرا لك عبد الله. أنا بدي أضيف شغلة اللي هي للأسف مع الكوفيد، مع الفيزا situation، مع الفاينانشال strains, a lot of institutions, the amount of postdoc or research spots for IMGs is getting less, and it's getting harder to get one. But if you really wanna do this, you have to take all what is necessary to do it, which means writing, like, so you have to take all the steps that Abdullah mentioned, mass emails, and you have to be very specific, concise, and to the point. You don't have to read, like kind of write long email. A lot of the people here are like really busy, and they don't really have a time to read like a half-page email. And you have to highlight yourself, okay, why this person should take you, right? And so that's number one. Just be to the point, very concise and direct. Number two, try to benefit from the experience, like from connections, people who are already doing research here in the US. That's going to be helpful for you, especially as Abdullah said. A lot of time when someone match and they don't have like a finished project, they usually ask for someone to take over. And sometimes this is a very good opportunity to take a project that was already being started, and you can finish it and probably publish that. Elective is a very good opportunity for you to pursue, kind of like, especially if you work with a mentor who work in research, and you have to approach them early in your elective month. So if you really want to do that, and then ask, because if that mentor doesn't do research, you start looking in the department itself. Maybe he can direct you to someone else he's willing to take you. So I know elective right now is very challenging, but that's something to keep in mind. ما بعرف إذا أحمد أو رجا they have anything to add.
I think you guys covered cool issue. I think one more thing to add is be very specific in what's your interest. when you approach someone, especially لما أنت تكون بلشت residency or even as a student بدك تشتغل research, don't go to a mentor and say, I don't know what I like. I'm willing to join anything you have. Do you have research that I can join? It doesn't look well. Try to find an interest. If you know what you want to do, research your mentor, see what he does, and if you think you're interested in what he does, say that I have an interest in this and that, and I've seen your work. And if you have something that's published or something that you did similarly in the past, it gives you a very good advantage to approach him. Say that, for example, Ahmed بيشتغل cardiomyopathies, I'm interested in amyloidosis, I did some work in it. I approach him, I say, I'm very interested in this, I've seen you publish a lot in it, and I want to learn from you and advance my career.
برضه شغله مهمه برجا اللي هي كمان بانه في ناس كثير برضه they're very desperate انه to match or to get out of Jordan, so they email anyone, and anyone who accepts them, they will go there. So this is very so to go back a little bit, so you don't have to know exactly what you want to do in the future for example, if you are interested in medicine, but you don't know exactly which field you want to go, that's fine. And sometimes you can have this common area between like a medical and surgical specialty where you kind of work, for example, like an aortic aneurysm, outcome, all this stuff. You may make a case like both way, and then you decide which way you want to go. But so the point is, don't just go anywhere because you're desperate to go for research. And this is going to lead us to the third question, which is, in the research experience, and just like to take it beyond just being accepted to a certain place, what are the things that you have to look for, and what are the things that you have to achieve in order to make it a good and successful experience? Ahmed, probably we can start with you if you want to share.
Yeah, so in terms of that question, I think somebody else asked it already. So what are the things that can make you successful? One is, I think you have to be more sophisticated when you think about these things. I can tell you that احنا مشكلتنا how we frame our questions for help. When you are trying to learn from somebody who graduated a couple of years behind you, the question should not be, hey, can you get me a position somewhere? The question should be, I'm interested in research, I want to apply, can I learn from your experience? And when people, for example, message me this, you have to realize I did this long time ago. Whatever I did at the time does not apply nowadays. But مثلا I'm in a position where I I run a very large team of researchers. Not that I have absolute control over them, for example, but you can ask me questions, and if I have the time, I'll get back to you. But you can ask me questions along the lines of an overall scenario or situation or advice, for example. But you know, so you have to know what to ask, who to ask it. People who graduated more recently will help you more typically, and you have to come it from the point of you want to learn more. When you're applying for research, it cannot be كمان إنه أنا just hey, I finished medical school, I want to come and do research. You have to have a story. You have to work hard and get some skills. I can tell you that the highest yield skill for getting into a research position is being strong in statistics. Excuse me. So if you learn how actually, you know, data works, if you learn how you can do like statistical methods, if you learn how you can do analysis using some of the softwares available, you suddenly become in the top 1% of people applying for a job research. The second thing is there are so many people applying within the US. So you're not only competing with external and IMGs and whatnot, there are so many people applying within the US, and depending on the position, one has to consider, why would I take this person from another country who will require, for example, a visa sponsorship and doesn't know anything? Why would I take them over someone here in the United States? So that's also something you need to think about. And you cannot go into a situation where انت completely يعني white or blank وما بتعرفش إشي. When I thought of talking to the guy I worked with, he was working on imaging and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. I read everything I could put my eyes on related to the subject before I even sat with him. And even then, I was very, you know, سطحي, يعني it was very superficial still, but at least I knew what he was talking about. I knew what I need to do. So I think these all circle back together to the point that, you know, it's not simple. It is complicated, but you have to think about it and consider how you can present yourself in a way, and you have to put yourself in other people's shoes. Why would someone hire you? Ask yourself this question and start working towards, if you like something, start working towards how you can present yourself in this fashion.
شكرا أحمد. في سيد sir, he just joined us, although he is on call, so I'll probably give him like a few minutes to talk before he gets a gun short wound or something there.
السلام عليكم. أنا اسمي سيد، معلش أنا في on call، بس يعني أول شكرا كثير على الفرصة. يا ريت الأمور يعني أفضل من هيك، الواحد كان ويكند وهيك وجوين يو. أنا بس brief introduction. أنا اسمي سيد السيد من فلسطين، وعملت الميديكال سكول هناك، وبعدين عملت ريسيرش باليو كي، ريسيرش فيلوشيب، ماسترز، and then research postdoc research fellowship بماس جنرال ببوسطن. وحاليا أنا PGY1 General Surgery Resident بتكساس تك. يعني أنا بالنسبة لي يمكن تقريبا كأني عملت Residency بالريسيرش، I think إنه كانت تجربة رائعة، تجربة حلوة، لأنه أنا بحب الريسيرش، وكمان كانت يعني سنوات كثير productive، وتمكنت إن أعمل publications والapplication تاعي أحسن. I think the other thing إنه فائدة الواحد يعمل research، وخاصة في أمريكا. I think الcultural differences كثير مهمة، يعني أكيد الفروقات كبيرة ما بين بلادنا فلسطين، الأردن أو ووهان. فوجود الواحد في أمريكا I think إنه بيحاول يتغلب على، أو بمعنى آخر يفهم الناس أكثر وهم يفهموا عليه أكثر. I think هاي شغلة كثير مهمة، وخاصة كمان الشغلات اللي نسميها soft skills، يعني الcommunications، شغلات هاي شغلة كثير مهمة، يعني الواحد يعني يتعلمها، وبدون ما يجي على البلد صراحة شوي الأمور صعبة. عشان هيك أي حدا خاصة بده يعمل competitive residency I highly recommend إنه الواحد يجي ويعمل ريسيرش في أمريكا، مش بس عشان ريسيرش بس I think الأهم مش soft skills، cultural barriers، شغلات هاي. إذا حدا حاب يسأل أي سؤال أنا يعني موجود. I think الزملاء جاوبوا أتوقع أغلب الأسئلة، بس إذا في أي سؤال ممكن أجاوب عليه.
سعيد أنا بدي أسألك how did you get into research your research spot ب MDH؟
هو أنا عملت observership، ما كانت elective. كنت مخلص الميديكال سكول 2016 ووقتها صراحة يمكن أنا بديت اليو اس باثوي شوي متأخر، فالأونلي possibility كانت إني أعمل observership. كنت أنا بالامتياز، فرحت رحت وعملت الobservership هناك مدة شهر فقط. وبعدها يعني أنا حكيت مع المنتور، قلت له أنا بدي أعمل جراحة باليو اس، شو أعمل بالضبط؟ فحكى لي بدون ما تعمل ريسيرش في أمريكا we are not gonna help you هيك، أو حتى حكى لي أي حدا في أمريكا صعب يساعدك. وهذا الفرق الجوهري يمكن ما بين الكومبيتيف سبيشاليتيز زي الجراحات واي ثينك الراديولوجي والسبيشاليتيز الثانيه. صراحه بدون ما تيجي تعمل ريسيرش لكتيف شغلات زي هيك في امريكا اتس ريلي هارد. فاللي صار انه حكيت له طب شو اعمل بالضبط؟ قال لي اعمل ستيب 1 وبعدين نحكي. وفعلا عملت ستيب 1، بعدين بعثت له قال لي قدم في عندنا انترناشونال بسموها انترناشونال ريسيرش فيلوشيب، وهي بس بياخذوا انترناشونال. فكان اللوكيت اب يعني MGH انترناشونال تروما ريسيرش فيلوشيب، وقدمت عليها ويعني انقبلت. طبعا قبلت بعد رفض مرتين يعني، فعشان تعرف قديش الكومبيتيشن صعب يعني. وهذا اللي خلاني I think انه اضلني باليو كي، لان انا قدمت وانا في بريطانيا. كنت بعمل السنه الاولى من الريسيرش تاعي وقدمت وما انقبلت، فاضطريت استنى كمان سنتين. ف I think انه كان فورمال ابلكيشن، بس صراحه بدون كونكشن مع حدا تشتغل معه it's extremely hard يعني to get in. وخاصه انا بالنسبه لي كان البوزيشن paid، فاي ثينك انه اذا انت بتسعى لمكان كبير زائد انه شيء paid يعني بدك تكون عندك كونكشن. طبعا اكيد يعني انا وقتي باليو كي ما ضيعته هيك يعني، عملت برضه بابليكيشنز. فاي ثينك انه وجود البابليكيشن مع الكونكشن هم الشغلتين مهمتين في انه الواحد يعني يحصل بوزيشن زي هيك. لقيت لو الواحد financially okay you can get unpaid position، بس انه صعبه يعني. هي شغلتين، اذا عندك شغلتين هدول الامور اسهل، ما عندك الامور بتصير اصعب. فاي ثينك هيك بشكل مختصر يعني.
شكرا كثير لك سعيد. في حدا عنده له سؤال specific لو سعيد before he goes؟
يعطيك العافية سعيد. بدي أسألك شغلة بخصوص الستيب 1. was it يعني like must to have it before applying، أو إنه مثلا إنه you just schedule it then you say إنه you're scheduling it before coming أو هيك شيء؟
هم على الويب سايت كاتبين انه preferable، بس صراحه internally it's a must يعني لازم يكون عندك الستيب 1. ليش؟ الثوت بروسيس اللي عندهم انه احنا بدنا حدا يكون يعني very serious انه بده يجي على اليو اس يعني، مش حدا بس مثلا بده يعمل ريسيرش. سمعيني؟
فهمت عليك.
سمعتوا شو حكيت ولا اتوقع كان صوت
لا سمعت.
هم الفكره فيها انه بدهم حدا انه سيريس وحدا جاي انه يعمل ريزيدنسي بامريكا. عشان هيك لو حدا عنده ستيب 1 في احتماليه اكبر انه يكمل في امريكا. فاي وود ريكومند صراحه.
ما كان معك لما قدمت سيدة؟
ما كان معي الستيب 1 صراحه.
الستيب 2 قصدي ما كان معك
لا
لما بلشت. اوكي.
لا بس ستيب 1. بس للامانه انا اللي بنصحه كالتالي، اذا حدا بده يجي على امريكا يحاول واتوقع ان الشباب في الاردن يعني بتمكن يعمل هذا الشغل اكثر. خلينا نحكي من الشباب اللي في الضفه وغزه. وانا شفت كثير لما كنت في عمان صراحه شيء كثير مبهر انه الشباب في سنه رابعه خامسه سادسه بيكونوا مخلصين اتليست ستيب 1. فهي my biggest recommendation انك تخلص ستيب 1 ويفضل كمان ستيب 2 قبل ما تخلص امتياز، بحيث انك تكون جاهز وخلص تيجي تعمل ريسيرش تكون فوكس. لانه الريسيرش خاصه لما تكون مكان كبير بتوقع منك تكون ماشين بمعنى انك تطلع بالسنه 20 30 40 publications. عن جد بحكي و you can do it، بس انه you have to be يعني هارد وركينج، وكمان انه ما يكون في شغلات ثانويه تشغلك بما فيه الاستبات. فهي الاكسبكتيشنز. بدك تروح على مكان اصغر شوي عادي، ممكن تعمل لك 1 بابليكيشن او 1 بوستر او 1 كونفرنس برزنتيشن وهيك، بس يعني مش it really depends. يعني بشكل عام يعني السي في تاعتك مش حتكون قويه كثير. فنصيحتي الناس تروح على مكان كبير، تكون مخلصه الستبات اتليست ستيب 1 وتشتغل عن جد. هم الاكسبكتيشن انك تكون ماشين وهيك امريكا يعني مختلفين عن بريطانيا. بريطانيا شوي ليزي الناس، بس في امريكا لازم تكون ماشين. اذا ما تكون ماشين ممكن ما يعطوك سالري وممكن ما يساعدوك. فهي هيك يعني.
Okay, we'll take one more question, Anas, and then we'll move on. Anas, you can go ahead and ask your question.
الله يعطيكم السؤال
أنس صوتك مش واضح.
الدكتور سيد، إذا ما في مجال ما في يور جوجل اوكي. الو
أنس ما سمعنا سؤالك، الصوت مش واضح. ممكن تكتبه على الشات if you want. That would be easier, I guess. طيب.
اوكي، بينما بينما انس يكتب سؤاله على الشات، بس بدي اكد على الشغله اللي حكاها السيد، شغله انه الستبس مش ضروريه لحتى تحصل J1 ريسيرش فيزا او بوزيشن، ولكن دائما كل ما تعمل حالك، كل ما تقدم حالك ب as a more favorable applicant، تكون ستباتك قبل الهاي، اكيد شيء يساعدك تحصل بوزيشن. الشغله الثانيه مثلا انا لما كنت مخلص كل امتحاناتي حتى ستيب 3 قبل ما اطلع امريكا وابلش الريسيرش. لما كنت بعمل ريسيرش كان تقريبا وقتي يعني بس كنت متفضي اعمل ريسيرش. بالوقت نفسه كان معي ناس باللاب لسه عم بدرسوا ستيب 1 ستيب 2، فاللي كانوا يدرسوا مثلا يعطلوا يوم بالاسبوع زياده، وقت الامتحانات ياخذوا لهم اسبوعين ثلاث، ما كانوا فوكس، يكون باللاب بيشتغل على البروجكت تبعه، بعد شوي تلاقيه يفتح اليوورد والكويشن بانك يشتغل عليهم، فالبرودكتيفيتي تاعتهم غير، والايمج اللي بيعكسوها عن نفسهم تطلع غير. فبس بالاخير بتزبط معهم. بامكانك تعمل الطريقين، تدرس وتعمل ريسيرش، ولكن بتكون صعبه عليك اكثر، واسهل يمكن انك تو امبرس والناس تعجب فيك اذا انت تكون متفضي للريسيرش وما في عندك شيء ثاني يشغلك منها.
انا برضه باكد على شغله الستبس، وهي كان نقطه رح نحكي عنها كان بعدين، بس since we're talking about it اللي هي try your best to finish your steps before come here. First of all, you're more focused, and then you will spend more time focusing on your research and like not splitting your time between two things that as equal and as important. You don't want to like immerse yourself in research and at the end of the day like kind of ignore your steps and get a lower score. That will actually harm you, like no matter how much research you have. So you have to balance things. For example, عندنا في هون BL في شاب أردني, he's very active, he's very in research. He works in the cardiothoracic department. He came here without doing his step, and now he's been here for 3 years and struggling to apply to the match because of that. So that's just to give you an example, like, even if you're really productive, that can like really halt your, future plan of applying to the match. So just briefly, just do your steps if you can. If not, just like one of them, then you can do the rest while you're here. Especially step 1, I guess, probably takes more time. So back to the question, what to look for when you apply for like any research spot. And again, like this is gonna, but back to the point that, and this is like probably if we able to change the narrative of research experience, that will be the most important thing of this webinar. That you don't look for the research experience for the sake of the match itself, but like as a future investment. So but for the short-term goals, there are like probably two things that you have to look for, or 3 things. First, is that you want to work with a mentor that he's willing to support you, which means that if he's willing to write you a good recommendation letter, he's willing to connect you with other people. And it's hard to know which one is, will do this, but the chances will be higher, for example, if you work with someone who is like, he owns a lab, or like not the basic lab, but kind of like he's kind of like a division of a department or something. Someone who's high up in the department or in the university or the medical school. So that's something that is going to be more beneficial and more stronger in your CV later on. At the same time, you want to work with someone that like you work with, and so you can have publications. The research experience by itself without publication may not actually look that much good in your resume, because people, they want to see how much you are productive. You can talk about research project, but why you haven't published yet. So either you're not active, or like it's going to take you a long time. And this is going to lead to the next question, which is, how long do I have to do research? We may kind of like briefly touch base on that. ما بعرف إذا حدا من الشباب بده يجاوب.
هلا بتعتمد بشكل كبير على الجولز تبعونك. اذا الهدف انك تحصل بوزيشن، حيلا بوزيشن، ممكن سنه واحده تكون كافيه. اذا ممكن جدا، حتى ممكن باي تخصص. اذا حابب تحصل مثلا بوزيشن بمكان اكبر، فرصك اكبر، ايديلي انا بتوقع سنتين. اكثر من سنتين بصير شويه زياده عن اللزوم، ولو انه في ناس بتعمل 3 سنين و 4 سنين. مثلا بعرف ناس بمتشوا جلديه، جراحه اعصاب، بس بيكونوا عاملين 3-4 سنين وبمتشوا بنفس المكان. فكتير بتعتمد على التخصص اللي بدك اياه والمكان اللي بدك اياه والجولز تبعتك. في كمان شغله ثانيه، في ناس هلا في تراك لتحصيل الجرين كارد عن طريق الريسيرش. ففي ناس بحكي لك لا، بدي اضل اعمل ريسيرش لحد ما احصل الجرين كارد، فمستعدين يعملوا 3-4 سنين 5 سنين لحد ما يحصل الجرين كارد. بحكي لك ما بدي اقدم على ما اشتغل لاكون محصل الجرين كارد، بس بامكانك تقدم عليها بنفس التراك وانت ريزيدنت. ف تعتمد بشكل كبير على الجولز تاعونك، التخصص، وين بدك تمتش وشو هدفك. يعني ما في جواب مثالي، بس كثير بيعتمد على انت شو هدفك.
شكرا عبد الله. زي ما حكيت، هو بيعتمد على اللونج تيرم جولز. في كثير ناس بيروحوا ببلشوا ريسيرش، بيشتغلوا سنه مع المنتور او حتى اقل من سنه، بيقدموا على الماتش، بعدين بيطلعوا. They want to do this just because of the match, just to apply for the match and get into residency. Nothing in particular bad in this, but I think your chances to publish something is going to be less in this case. You may have like an ongoing research project that you can talk about that may be published later. But أنا زي ما حكى عبد الله, I agree with him. Probably 2 years is the best, duration. Again, there's nothing wrong, right in this. It depends on your situation. But again, like, try when you go to a research experience, go there because you want to be there and prove yourself, not just because of residency. That's the goal that you have probably, or the idea that you have to change about research in the US is not about residency. It's more about investing in yourself, because we're not only talking about publication, we're talking about improving your English, improving your writing skills, making connections. Sometimes if you get paid, you will be able to build some a cushion of cash before you move forward. So try change the narrative and then move forward. Ahmed or Raja, if you have anything to add, otherwise we can move on.
So are you going to talk about other unusual routes, such as a degree or research assistant positions? If not, we can.
Yeah. Since you brought this, we can talk about it now.
So I can tell you from experience, life looks very difficult when you're a student or when you just graduate. You feel that you're not supported. بتحس انك انت لحالك ضايع. بتحس انه كل شيء expensive وغالي والحياة صعبة. But the reality is it's an investment. كل الناس هون بأمريكا بتخرجوا عندهم $500,000-600,000 in loans. مش والله انه احنا عندنا access لهذا amount of loans. I'm not suggesting that. بس when I was in your shoes كمان لما كنت اسمع ارقام انه والله الديجري 30,000 او المستحيل يعني we can't really do this. But the reality is I think a lot of us, one, في good number of students who are financially secure. But we're not used to pay that much for education. I think that's one thing to think about. Two, a degree can help you one get into the system, become a much more sophisticated individual, learn a lot more from the people around you, learn more life skills, learn how to talk, how to write, how to do much better, become almost a US graduate, although a master's degree or an MPH doesn't make you a pure US graduate, but it adds a lot to your CV or a master's in science. The second thing is once you're a student here, like in my hospital, I cannot hire anybody I want. And volunteering now is becoming extremely difficult during COVID. I get so many emails from people who live in my city, who graduated from outside, who just want to do good work. And I would love to have them, yet the system prevents me because of COVID, for example. So what I was getting at with that, once you're here in the university as a student, it is so easy to tag along and do research projects. You're going to have a lot of paper, a lot of studying to do for your degree, but you can still do tons of research during. So that's one. So that's a route. You might say, I don't have money. Well, you can figure out ways to get loans, even from back home. When you're working as a trainee, you make $50,000 to $60,000 a year. It's not a lot of money. But if you live a frugal life, if you live on, حياة بسيطة يعني, you can save a lot and you can repay all of your loans and everything. That's one. Two, there is for people who are fortunate to have a green card or a US citizenship, there is another route in, which is taking these entry positions called research assistant jobs. So research assistant jobs are for people who don't know anything and are just have basic clinical skills, and medical students are actually attracted for these jobs because they know how to talk to patients, or at least we presume they know how to talk to patients. You can become a research assistant. You're not gonna benefit from this position itself, but it's a paid position. You make about $40,000 a year, so you can live a decent life. Concurrently, you're already at the university, so you can do a lot of research at the same time on your own time, obviously. But even if not, you're already in the system. And even if you sign for a year, you have no obligation to stay for a year. So you're already in the United States, you're making some money, you're already in the system, you learn how to talk, how to do stuff. Then you can start looking for other research positions after that. And this is very common. People are not married to the system. I hire research assistants all the time in my position. They come for a couple of months and then they send me the resignation letter for 2 weeks notice. I think my system is stupid to allow that to happen, but in the United States, they don't chain you. They don't hold you accountable to how long you signed up for, as long as you give your notice. So these are two unusual routes that people don't think about a lot, but they're very, very effective, but require some investment.
Yeah, that's great, Ahmed. Yeah, these are not really very common routes that people think about, and they actually, especially for the research assistants, actually, if you look really around, you may be able to find something. And as a job description, actually, it may not fit you really well. Kind of like you can imagine that some research assistants here like probably like a nurses, and like you start thinking like, why should I do like a nursing job, or like someone can be done as a nurse. But if you think about it, this is like, so you want an entry point, right? You want to enter the system. And now this traditional way of sending emails and volunteering is becoming really hard. So you have to be more creative and finding way to get into the system. So as Ahmed said, degree, research assistants, and Ahmed, a lot of people ask like what kind of degree they should look for. the one I can think about is either Master of Health, Master of Science, where you get education about statistics, epidemiology, and research methodology, or Master of Public Health. These are the two things that commonly been done. I don't know, Ahmed, if you have any other thoughts.
So there are so many types of degrees nowadays, and they vary a lot by the requirements as well as by the amount of money you have to pay for them. You cannot do a degree at the University of Phoenix, for example. It cannot be a degree from a small university or online university that nobody knows anything about. You can still do it online if you want. You're not going to benefit as much when it's online. But if you do a degree from Harvard that's online, nobody knows it's actually online, because you still graduate from the same master's class online or in person. But the point of the degree is to be there, to meet people, to learn, to do research on the side. So I recommend always in person over online anytime. If you are trying to come to the US, if you're already here as a resident, then online degrees are an attractive option for you. The degrees are masters in public health. They're a little bit more expensive, and they don't always give you what you want to do. There's a lot of flexibility in masters in science or sciences or art of science that can be tailored, and the coursework can be tailored. So you can actually look at the coursework and see things that can fit what you want to do in life. There is also masters in statistics, which tend to be hardcore and a lot of people don't do well in. There is masters in clinical research, which is also good. And nowadays there is masters in data analysis, in data science, in data visualization, masters in programming, artificial intelligence. So there are so many types of masters you can do to improve your CV. But the bottom line is you have to look at the cost. You have to look at the name of the university. It has to be a good university. And then what opportunities does this master's degree or afford you as a stepping stone? I just want to mention one last thing. A PhD is not necessarily off the table. If you're someone who wants to come to the US, but you unfortunately did not do well in general, in a lot of things did not do well, and your CV essentially is not something that allows you to match somewhere reasonable, then investing in yourself for a couple of years, 3-4 years, doing a PhD is not something that's bad. This is very common pathway for Indians and Chinese people who come here. They don't know how, their English is weak. They don't have good medical school scores, and they didn't do good on Yosemite steps. Typically, they spend 4 or 5 years doing a PhD, and then they match into top programs in the United States. And so there are a lot of pathways. It's not always that the shortest pathway is the best, but you have to think about it in this fashion.
Yeah. Something to add, if you can't really afford a degree because of the cost, there are like other programs offered sometimes by good and big schools, and here certificate programs. Certificate programs, they don't really have the same weight as a degree. You may get probably somehow the similar education, very similar, but like it's gonna be less weight and less cost. I think maybe that's probably a good starting point if you can't really afford doing a degree. At the same time, you want to learn about research and methodology. For example, like Harvard Medical School, they have different programs, the Global Clinical Research Program, Scientific Writing Program. I know now other schools, they going through the same route by offering certificates. That's something that's gonna probably highlight you more when you apply. You kind of start looking for spots. Hey, I have this certificate from Harvard that's talking about research. It may probably give you more weight compared to other, and actually it may help with residency. So that's an option that you may look for, and just kind of look around and see what are the universities that they offer this, and it can be actually good for you. It costs anywhere between $10,000 to $15,000. But if you have the money and you want to spend and you want to invest in yourself, go for a degree. طيب هلا رح نحكي عن
one comment about the money factor. Once you're in, once you start your training position, once you finish training and you become an attending, you're going to look back and not think too much about this. Right now, it does seem that if you're going to take a loan for $20,000 from somebody, that it's just an astronomical number. But the reality is, and people can talk about this here too if they want, even as a trainee, you're able to save and repay back, even as a trainee. So think about it as an investment in yourself. And people don't think about it this fashion. People think that they're wasting their time. And I think that's what needs to be changed so that you can do more.
Great. Hello. If you really want to do research and you can't find a spot in the US and you can offer a degree, there's a common question is like how we can do research in Jordan. Me myself, I was able to publish a paper from the Markaz al-Hussein al-Saratan. Well, I know a lot of people, they're active in research by Markaz al-Hussein. They're able actually to publish good articles and publications in a decent journals. بعرف في ناس عبد الله he mentioned about ناس من الجامعة الأردنية. I think if you go somewhere you will find people. Hopefully they're here. في هم من Research Quest. Hassan or Sibaway, they are very active in research. I hope they can briefly share their experience with us. If not, we can move on. So just to tell you about Research Quest, and I really admire their work. It's like they're fresh graduates, or like, and some of them actually they're still students, trying to kind of like gather and talk more about research, and they do like a brief research courses to learn research methodology and statistics and all this stuff. It's a good starting point, I guess. It's good that when you apply or you send emails that, yeah, I have a basic knowledge of statistics. And being in Jordan doesn't really mean that you can do research, but you have to find the right person. And maybe the quality of research that we do in Jordan is not that good, but again, at the beginning of your learning curve or like launch of your career, you're not aiming to publish in the New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA. You just need to kind of like have a hands-on experience, how to write an abstract and a manuscript, and how to analyze data, how do you understand that? And after that, you can progress and improve yourself. Abdullah, do you want to share your experience in Jordan?
أنا ما عندي أي experience.
I think it was
Raja. I think
was me. So I was lucky. I worked. بعرفش منكم الناس بيعرفوا دكتور أيمن عارف. He's an endocrinologist بالجامعة الأردنية, and he's very active in research. I know a lot of people who had very good success in publishing with him. I was lucky. I had 2 first author publications معه during my 6th year بالامتياز. He's wonderful. And he will teach you a lot about the statistics, like the study designs, how to do scientific writing, how to set a manuscript. I remember I used to sit with him for like hours in his office just to go over the manuscript ونشوف كيف نظبطه. I remember the first time I tried to write something, everything can read in track changes. He taught me a lot. So the other thing in Jordan, I think, is an advantage. IRB will all of these like bureaucratic things are much more lax. So you don't have to go through a lot of loops that you have to go through in the US. And you can get a project going, I think, quicker in Jordan if you have a project. Also, بتذكر كنا to collect labs just for the purpose of research, and the insurance companies will not ask you why are you sending this lab. It's not like the US. An attending wants to get a TSH for the purpose of research. بالأردن مش كتير they will care why you're getting a TSH, especially بمستشفى جامعي. So I think هدول كلهم advantages that you can get something done in Jordan. You just need to get the right mentor. I was lucky to connect with someone who was willing to teach me. And I think there's some of them out there. I know a lot of people who were able to publish while they're students.
Yeah, أنا بعرف حتى في ناس they were able to publish basic research. في دكتورة رنا دجاني بمستشفى الجامعة الهاشمية. She published something in Nature. So I think the bottom line, there is some research in Jordan, and you have to look for, and you look around. And I think, I don't know if it's good or bad. Research sometimes, if you want to do it in Jordan, sometimes actually be much easier. So we don't have all of these like bureaucratic, steps that we have to do in the US. So just look around, and I think you should be able to find something.
I wrote this in the chat, but I met somebody, I thought it was brilliant. I never thought about this in my life. I met somebody who actually did learn how to do DNA, RNA isolation, cell processing by going to a commercial lab who essentially process samples. And and I thought that was brilliant. Then you apply for a position, you say, I know how to process DNA, RNA, cell isolation, etc. You might think that this is not important, but actually it does. There is something you can talk about. I'm not just a medical student who doesn't know what to do anything, And also it tells me that you thought about something that very few people thought about. You think outside the box, you're brilliant. So I think these are things to consider.
Yeah, if you go even if you go to the university itself and you go to these chemistry labs and who are doing basic stuff, we still have some science being done in Jordan. So I think you can learn PCR, Western blot, how to process, specimens. So if you have this again, as Ahmed said, you have to have something to talk about, and you highlight yourself, because each research mentor, they have tons of emails coming to them that, yeah, I need this research spot. Can you help me? So you have to do an extra step to highlight yourself. I think I saw Sibaway.
Good evening, Ahmed.
أهلا سيبوي, كيفك?
I'm good, wallah. I'm sorry I haven't been able to attend. I had some difficulty, but here I am now.
لا ما في مشكلة. Briefly, if you can share what do you guys do on Research Quest, and what are your advice for people looking for research in the US?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, we started as a small student group. We had no previous experience. We had we had nobody actually to even teach us. So we formed a small group and we started learning research by ourselves. We just scrubbed some online courses and we put a plan. We made a small study group. After our first publication, it took us some effort. We were clueless. We were doing a systematic review, which is the methodology of it was actually difficult. And once we did it, we were only 9 students who actually managed to do it and publish it. We realized how difficult it was for us to reach this kind of experience. So we decided to do an initiative called Research Quest. You probably heard of it. It's a student-based initiative built by students, offering help to students. Our main goal was actually to help other people, not by just giving them courses and education, but by giving them guidance and a community to rely on. One of the problems was not just learning research, but learning what to learn. In statistics, I mainly work right now in statistics. I'm a research analyst. And when I started learning statistics, I did not know what are the high things, or what should I do in order to become a statistician who can analyze data and work in clinical research. So the greatest value that we're trying to offer is a community in which students can help each other to learn research. We also focused on let's say the awareness part, the awareness that research is so important. And it's not just a ticket to go outside. The reason actually why it's a ticket, because you become a better doctor when you learn how to do research, because the 21st century is going towards evidence-based medicine, learning how to read the literature and not actually read it, but critically appraise the available literature, helps a physician or a doctor to provide better patient care for his patients. So I don't want to make this any longer, but what I would tell any med student who is going into research or interested in research, first, it's easier than it looks. يعني it looks very complicated. There's a statistical part. There's how to read the literature, how to it's very overwhelming when you start. But I would say learn the basics and get the habit of reading literature into your day. Every day, just read one article. Try to manage reading one article a day, and that would make you a researcher, because in every research article, the methods part, they tell you exactly how they did it, whether it was a basic descriptive study or a very complicated basic science or translational research article. So what I would say for any med student, get into it. It's so important. It changes the way you think. It changes the way how you learn medicine, how you memorize, how you understand the concepts in anything, like in physiology or in biochemistry. So actually getting into research, learning about cancer, learning about thoracic surgery, those are my interests. They made me know what kind of doctor I would love to be, and where would I want to be in the future. So it is very, very crucial, and it's easier than it looks. It's so difficult for one student to do everything on their own. But the thing is that you need a team. To begin with, it makes things much, much easier if you have a team where you can divide the tasks. يعني تحكي لفلان يعمل statistics, وفلان to find an idea and review the literature, وفلان will take care of the manuscript writing. This makes it much easier. Teamwork makes it more compelling for you to actually to sustain and continue. بينما alone singular effort makes it difficult to move on or continue, especially during the hard parts. Thank you.
شكرا كثير لك سيبوي. Yeah, and I advise everyone who wants to kind of like know exactly how to do things in Jordan, reach out to Sibaway, Hassan, and Research Quest, and they're doing really amazing effort for like with a very limited resources. You can like benefit from their experience. You can build on what you can learn from them, and you can take it from there. شكرا لك سيبوي.
Thank you very much for.
Yeah, we have two more points to cover, which like been asked a lot, which is paid versus unpaid, or visa. What kind of visa you get when you do research in the US, and the last thing is like how to do research and residency, and maybe Raja can help us with that.
Yeah,
so,
can I start with this, because
yeah, sure.
I might need to give like 15 minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the one thing I wanted to say in the path to go from a medical student to a research position and then do residency is not the needed path for everyone. You don't have to do that path. Not everyone has to do that path. It depends on what your CV is, depends on what your specialty of interest is, and how well you did on your USMLEs. If you score well on your USMLEs and you don't have any red flags on your CV, and you want to go for like, let's say, an internal medicine position, you can probably get a decent residency just by that, without doing any research. And then you're in the system. Once you're in the system, you're in residency, you have 3 or 4 years to connect with people, and then you can do a lot of research during these years and get a big step up on your fellowship from, let's say, like a mediocre or like medium level residency to a really good university hospital fellowship program. And I know a lot of people who did that. And actually, this is the more common pathway where people end up doing than going into a research position and then going into residency. So how to do it? As I said, one thing is try and get a sense early on what you want to do. It's always good to be flexible, but once you're into residency, when you want to approach a mentor, it's very helpful to be specific in like, I want to do this. I researched you and I know what you do and I'm interested in it, because it shows dedication and it shows interest. If you go to someone who's a cardiologist or who's a gastroenterologist and say, I want to do research in GI or I want to do research in cardiology, it's okay to not know what you want, but at least when you meet him, you have to do a little bit of research, know what he does, and show that you're interested in it. And it helps, because you want to set yourself apart from your other 30 or 40 residents in your class who are meeting with the same people. And أنت عندك people who do research in an institution معروفين. There's like 4, 5, 6, 10, however, these are the active publishing people. Everyone will approach them. And then if you are an attending, you get 10 emails from 10 residents who want to do cardiology, and everyone wants to do cardiology. How will you pick who you're going to work with? So show interest, be very specific. The other good advice, as I said, know how your schedule works ahead of time. You will always have months in residency that are very light. you'll do like ambulatory or clinics or things that don't need you to be having a lot of patient care, and arrange yourself accordingly. And if you're working for an IRB, make sure you have your IRB ready, you have your approval ready, you're starting to like write or collect data or do the thing that needs a lot of time when you get those like 3 months, so that when you're back in the ICU or when you're back in a busy rotation, you can just have the thing with your mentor for them to review, and you don't have to do anything during that time. So build your time well. The other good advice I think is if you have the time and you're not rushing, doing a chief resident here is a very big plus. Not just for research, it helps you build connections. When you're a chief resident, you're like on par with an attending, so they treat you as an attending, you do rotations as an attending, you manage teams as a hospitalist as an attending, so you are on an attending to attending level with the other physicians who are attendings, and you build a lot of connections with them, and this helps you both in research and in getting connections and letters of recommendations and stuff like that. The last advice I have for you guys is if you get offered a position in residency, make sure you deliver. So the worst thing you can do and hurt yourself is you stretch yourself too thin, you connect to so many people, and then you don't finish any of the projects. And this looks bad on your CV, and it also hurts you from getting more opportunities down the line. It's a small circuit in academia, so everyone knows everyone. So if you want to get into a good fellowship, you need people to make phone calls for you. And if you get into a project with someone and they give you data, they give you opportunities, or you never finish them, it doesn't look good, and no one is going to be able to make that phone call and support you.
Yeah, شكرا لك كثير رجاء. في إنه سؤال إنه some people will ask إنه why would you do research in residency? And the answer is basically is like same in residency, fellowship can actually be very competitive. Like certain
actually more competitive.
Yeah, like certain fellowship like cardiology or GI, they're very competitive. At the same time, especially if you come from like kind of community level or like community affiliated program where you want to apply, matching into a very competitive fellowship. So that's why we kind of like we keep saying that if you build a research skills right now, it's going to carry you on with you in your residency and even after your fellowship and your future career. So that's something to highlight. The last point is paid versus unpaid, and what kind of visa you usually end up into. So paid versus unpaid, basically paid position is like you get paid for being as like employed by a university or the hospital. Unpaid is that you didn't really get any money, and you have to fund your own expenses from your own pocket. How does it usually work? It really depends on the university, the hospital, how much budget they have, and how much they're willing to sponsor you. A lot of the programs actually research, they accept you for a spot. They will say, you know what, we don't know exactly how good he is. Probably I'm going to start you with unpaid, and if until I see your productivity, I can switch you to paid position. This is a very common pathway. And most of the time, the visa is J1 research visa, and this is a very common question. And which is like, if I end up in a J1 research visa, can I do like a training later on a J1 visa? Yes, you can. You don't have to go back home, because a lot of you probably know that if you do J1, there's like 2 home year requirement where you have to go back home unless you find a waiver. But there are 2 different types of research of J1. This is J1 research, and the other one is J1 training or aligned physician. Rarely you get H1 visa, and I don't advise anyone to go into H1 visa because it's a working visa, and you have to continue to be on an H1, and it has like its own limits. So most of the time it's going to be a J1 research. Ahmad or Abdullah, were you paid when you started your research experience?
هلا هذا يمكن اكثر سؤال بتخيل بهم الطلاب واي حدا ابليكنت، دائما السؤال الاول paid ولا unpaid. للاسف لما بدك تدور على position research بدك تفترض انه unpaid until proven otherwise. بشكل عام اغلب البوزيشنز unpaid، بدك تفترض انها unpaid. انا اول سنه كنت unpaid، السنه الثانيه كنت paid. البوزيشنز اللي بالعاده بتكون paid يا اما اللي بتكون structured research fellowship. بتخيل هلا ما بعرف عن الريسيرش fellowship اللي عملها أسيد، بس it sounded like a more structured يمكن كانت paid. بعرف other labs بيكون عندهم paid fellows، بس لما تكون paid بالعاده يا اما بدها تكون مثلا بقدر احكي عن المكان اللي انا هلا فيه، الجامعه اللي انا فيها، في عندنا بالديبارتمنت كذا منتور عندهم ريسيرش فيلوز وعندهم لابس. بالعاده عندهم خريجين مثلا من دوله معينه بتخرجوا بس يمتشوا they recommend خريجين من نفس الدوله، بيسحبوا بعض. حكى معي كذا حدا اردني، وديت لهم اسماء الدكاتره اللي عندنا بالمستشفى عندهم ريسيرش فيلوز. بتخيل مش كثير منهم سمعوا رد مشجع، لانه خلص مثلا هذا المنتور بعرف مجموعه معينه، كل ما حدا يمتش ريكومند الجماعه اللي بعدهم، وهدول بيكونوا paid. فللاسف بدك تفترض انه unpaid الا اذا كنت كثير محظوظ، ممكن السنه اللي بعديها تبلش paid، او مثلا بعد 6 اشهر تبلش paid. او هلا في شغله الناس بتحكي لك انه اذا انت امريكي بيدفعوا لك، اذا مش امريكي ما بيدفعوا لك. هذا الحكي مش كثير دقيق، لانه عادي ممكن تكون على J1 ويندفع لك راتب، بس الماجوريتي unpaid. بعضهم ممكن تقلب paid مع الوقت، بس بدك دائما لما تدور على ريسيرش بوزيشن اذا ما عندك اكسبيرينس لا تتوقع حدا يدفع لك. اذا كان عندك publications خرافيه او عندك والله ماسترز ان بابليك هيلث ممكن انه تبلش على paid، بس بشكل عام الفكره انه بدهم يعرفوك بعدين بدفعوا لك اذا اثبتت حالك.
والله في كثير ناس، انا شغله بدي اضيفها، كثير في ناس انه لما ممكن يطلع له رد، يجي حدا يرد عليه يحكي له يا I'll take you for unpaid position، انه اوكي خلص no I need paid position. But if you want to think about it, يعني we'll go back to the degree point, which is think about it like as an investment. Yeah, you're gonna spend money probably maybe 6 أشهر أو سنة not being paid. Life in the US is not, it depends where you are. Like, yeah, you look forward to spend anywhere between 2,000 to 3,000 a month. So it may sound a lot, but try to find a way, like, and once you get in, you may be able to navigate through and find a way to, if you impress them, actually, you may convince them that, yeah, probably we should pay this guy. So don't get like really a negative feeling if you offered something unpaid. Things are really getting difficult, and just look at it as an investment. I think, unless Ahmed, you want to add something? I guess probably we covered most of the points. If anyone has a question, we can spend like 15-20 minutes just answering them before we finish it.
هلا انا بس بدي احكي عن شغله. since انه انا حصلت بوزيشن ريسيرش عن طريق sending mass emails. كثير بيحكوا معي ناس، بسالهم اوكي وديتوا ايميلات؟ لمين وديتوا؟ بيحكوا لي جامعه كذا وكذا وكذا. بسالهم قدمتوا على ماس جنرال، قدمتوا على هوبكنز، قدمتوا على ييل؟ بيحكوا لي انه لا ما قدمنا، انه انا السي في تاعتي فاضي، فما انه زي ما عندهم الثقه انف انه يقدموا على هاي الاماكن الكبيره. جوابي انه بالعكس، الاماكن الكبيره هي اللي فيها ريسيرش، هي اللي بتحتاج انه يجيبوا ريسيرش فيلوز حتى لو ما عندك ريسيرش اكسبيرينس. امريكا مش كلياتها ريسيرش انجنز، مش كل المستشفيات والجامعات فيها ريسيرش خرافي وبيحتاجوا نفس ما زي ما عندنا بالاردن في جامعات احسن من جامعات، نفس الشيء في امريكا مش كل الجامعات تشتغل ريسيرش. فانا بعتقد لما تودوا ايميلات لازم تودوا للاماكن الكبيره، لانه كل ما كانت الجامعه اكبر كل ما كان عندها فاندنج، كل ما كان عندها ريسيرش اوبورتونيتيز. فما حدا يتردد انه يودي لمستشفيات زي ماس جنرال، بريغام، هوبكنز، ييل، ستانفورد، يوبان، يونيفرسيتي اوف بنسلفانيا. وباي ذا واي هاي الجامعات اللي هي تعتبر ايفي ليج وتوب نوتش، يمكن راح تتفاجئوا انه very IMG friendly. at least بقدر احكي عن المستشفى اللي انا فيها بجونز هوبكنز، تقريبا كل برنامج اقامه فيه IMG including الأورثو، جراحة الأعصاب، ديرماتولوجي، كل التخصصات فيها IMGs، بس أغلبهم بيكونوا IMGs اللي عملوا ريسيرش عندهم. فما حدا يتردد إنه يودي لهاي الأسماء الكبيرة.
Shukran, Abdullah. And I'm trying to go like back to a question in the chat, answer like anything that was not answered. A common point is like some people they will think about research as yeah, this is a gap after graduation, which is not the case actually. You know, a gap is considered like really bad if you end up like kind of a year or two without doing anything, or doing something that has nothing to do with medicine. Research is not considered like a gap in your career. It may actually look, you know, even better for you rather than doing something else. So that's something to keep in mind. Scores versus research, which one is important? It's really hard to tell, you know, like each one has a different perspective from the program director or like the program, you know, residency leadership. Scores, you know, they use it like as a screening tool, how much you're like probably gonna, you know, perform in the exams and how's like your knowledge. Research may tell you exactly, tell people like how productive you are and how much you're willing to put an extra effort. So no one can tell. Generally speaking, yes, score is like the screening tool, like it's the key to get an interview. And after that, you will like prove yourself through your research experience and publications.
There is one question that Zaina asked about programs that, you know, on the translational aspect or more basic. There are actually a lot of structured programs in the US in like biomedical engineering, in cell biology, in whatever. There are a lot of structured programs where you, if you're willing to invest the time in genetics, genomics, if you're willing to invest the time and effort, it can be extremely helpful for your career in general. I think medical students and graduates don't think about these because they're not looking necessarily that early for a career. They're looking a little bit just to, you know, get by and match and go to a position or go to a fellowship after. So not a lot of people think about it this way, but from other countries around the world where it's more competitive to come here, they actually do join a lot of these programs. And it's typically at least 2 to 3 years, if not longer. You can do it without a degree, or you can do it with getting to a PhD eventually. The nice thing about programs like that, a lot of them can be paid, and a lot of them, if not paid initially, they pay you after. But it's not a lot of money. It's kind of a student stipend versus, you know, like a pre-doc, almost like, you know, $25,000 a year, something around that. But slowly with time it goes up, and you learn a lot of skills from. You become, you know, it becomes different. That becomes kind of a career for you, not just doing a research paper or something like that.
شكرا أحمد. في سؤال هو research versus US clinical experience. Again, there's like a no yes or no. They're completely kind of like probably different. US clinical experience sometimes actually will lead you to research, and vice versa. Research you can get into a US clinical experience when you do it. It depends on what specialty you have, what kind of your goals, and I think a lot of programs, US clinical experience actually, and US letter of recommendations is a prerequisite for application. So you may, in the short term, to put like more weight into get into US clinical experience. And once you get into that, may you look into research. So don't think of like about a yes or no, and like, or does research kind of like can substitute US clinical experience, which could not be the case sometimes.
في سؤال انه على جي 1 ريسيرش بامكانك تشتغل شغل ثاني او تحصل مصدر دخل. لا، اذا انت على جي 1 ريسيرش او حتى كلينيكال ممنوع تستلم راتب غير من الجهه اللي سبونسرينج يور فيزا. يعني اذا انت جاي على ريسيرش ما بتقدر تشتغل اوبر، ما بتقدر تشتغل بمطعم، ما بتقدر تشتغل في اماكن ثانيه.
Yeah, there's another question. Yeah, probably we kind of briefly answered. Does the research, you know, experience has to be the same field of residency? Not necessarily, but think about it, like sometimes it may not look into your resume. So let's say that you're working on a pure surgical, project, and then you're applying for medicine. You have to justify why you're doing this. It may not necessarily, it may help you, but it may actually draw back your application. Any other questions? Meanwhile, Ahmad, you want to kind of like say a closing point from your perspective?
Sorry, before closing, can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
So is residency in California or research in general more difficult than outside of California, especially right now with the waiver of the California letter? Does anybody know by any chance?
So I live on the West Coast. Everything here is competitive, not because the West Coast is, not because the programs are amazing. It's because everybody wants to live here. And so even in California, there are programs that actually are, not as good as half the programs in the Midwest, but they get all American applicants because nobody wants to move. Everybody wants to stay in California or in the Pacific Northwest. And so that's part of it. For example, slowly now at where I am, we're taking more IMGs because not IMGs from like Jordan, we're taking more fellowship applicants who are IMGs. But those are, as Abdullah said, typically they're the best of the best. So you're trading an American graduate who doesn't have anything on their CV, who you met them in the interview, they're very dull, they're not exciting. You're trading them for someone who, if they graduate from the US, would be at Harvard, for example. So this is how to think about it. You can still do whatever you want to do. You can still apply to California everywhere, but it's extremely rare to get into UCSF, Stanford, UCLA, UCSD. It's more common to get to some of the community programs, UC Irvine, Loma Linda, places like that. It's more common to get into them than the other ones.
Okay.
كمان ممكن تعتمد على التخصص. تعتمد كثير على التخصص. بالنسبة للأشعة UCSD is kind of IMG friendly. UCLA بأخذوا الريسيرش فيلوز تاعونهم every now and then. ستانفورد بأخذوا الريسيرش فيلوز IMGs كمان every now and then. فكتير تعتمد على التخصص. وزي ما يعني السمري تبع كل هذا التوك إنه أنت لما تكون تعمل ريسيرش بأمريكا وسمعتك منيحة نوعا ما بتبطل الاي ام جي اللي جاي من برا، بتصير اي ام جي مفضل او بتصير مور فاميليار مع السيستم، بتصير نوعا ما جزء من السيستم. سو بتعتمد كثير على التخصص.
في سؤال can research overcome low scores? I think yes. If sometimes if you're like if you did your homework and like end up in a position where you worked hard, you did some publications, even in if low scores, sometimes it's like these big names, if they're really good enough, they can take you. So yes, and this is actually my advice for anyone who has a low score to find a research spot.
أنا كتير بعرف ناس سكورز 210 220 ومتشوا بتخصصات منيحة بجامعات كتير منيحة، لأنه عملوا ريسيرش، عملوا كونكشنز، قدموا حالهم بطريقة يعني كان في بالابليكيشن تبعهم شغلات كتير غير السكور. لما يكون ما عندك شيء غير السكور أكيد رح يطلعوا على السكور. لما يكون عندك أكثر من شغلة غير السكور كله راح يعني بالآخر ما في خلطة سحرية لتحصيل البوزيشنز بأمريكا، بس بدك decent scores, good overall application، والأهم منه البرفورمانس بالانترفيو. أنا هيك ما كنت أعرفها غير لما صرت ريزيدنت وصرنا نوعا ما الديبارتمنت بنشوف كيف الريكروتمنت بروسس بتصير. يعني حتى مثلا هلا عندنا هلا موسم انترفيوز بالديبارتمنت عندنا مش أقل من 20 ل 30 ريسيرش فيلو، وكلياتهم المنتورز تبعونهم they recommend them للبي دي. بالاخر يعني being a research fellow in a certain department doesn't guarantee you a position ب that department، لانه at the end it's a recruitment process. في عندك committee وفي عندك انت مش الشخص الوحيد اللي بتعمل research، في غيرك dozens. So ما في خلطة سحرية والأمور هيك بتيجي as a package كلك على بعضك package الابليكيشن السكورز الريسيرش أنت كيف بتقدم حالك بالانترفيو وحبوك ما حبوك.
So we'll try to focus the questions mainly on على research related. I'm sorry, we had different webinars in the past. You can go back into them if you want to have more questions about how to boost your application. Like similarly to the scores, that does the research experience overcome your graduation or like a gap, like a long. It may actually, but you have to think about it that doing research is going to also extend your year of graduation. But if this is like a really red flag in your application, and you think that research is a shortcut to overcome this, yeah, it may actually. This is also another question. This is like after making a USMLE step 1 pass fail, how much influence will be more into research? From my own perspective, I'm not into like a residency program directorship or anything like this, but I think there will be more emphasis on other extracurricular activities like research, US clinical experience, relative recommendations, connections. And there's going to be more emphasis on step 2 as well. It's really hard to predict how things are going to work. The trajectory right now with the virtual interviews that things are getting more competitive. So I'm not sure how it's going to look next year or the year after. I don't know if Abdullah or Ahmed, they have a different answer.
عن ال virtual interviews ولا
عن ال step 1 and pass fail, how much research?
لما يعني انت بدك something to distinguish your application. لما تكون جايب 260 270 هاي راح تبين الابلكيشن تبعك. لما يصير باس اور فيل راح يصير كل الابليكنتس باس اور فيل. راح يصير تركيز على ستيب 2. سو اكيد العلامات راح يضل لها قيمه. ما بعرف اذا ستيب 3 للانترناشونالز راح يصير له قيمه اكثر لانه اصلا الامريكانز ما بيقدروا ياخذوا ستيب 3 غير ليبلشوا انترنشيب. وشغله الفيرتشوال انترفيوز حسب الفيدباك اللي عم بحسه انه يمكن راح تضل لانه شكله الكل عم بحبها both applicants و program directors. فاكيد الريسيرش بدك اي شيء يضيف للابلكيشن تبعك سواء كان ريسيرش experience observership hands on clerkship اي شيء بيضيف للابلكيشن تبعك مهم.
طيب احنا almost done.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah, Ahmed, if you want to say anything, you'll probably wrap up.
I just want to say one thing. The way you think about things show off in the interview. إذا أنت البني آدم اللي when I say build the story الناس دائما بتفكر إنه إحنا بنحكي خبابيص. It's true though. When you have a story to talk about or you build your story over the years, what you have done, what you have achieved, it shows off in the interview. إنك أنت بني آدم sophisticated, you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, you know what you're doing, your goals, what they are إلى آخره. لما أنت تكون تفكيرك إنه أنا هذا السكور وهذا الريسيرش بروجكت وهاي البيبر وكم بيبر لازمني وكم ابستراكت لازمني وشو لازم اتعلم عشان اعمل هيك، هذا كويس لإلك انت كبني ادم. بس if you projected, which is I interview a lot of people, this projects in a lot of them and they always go to the bottom of the rank list or they don't get ranked. لانك انت ما بدك ناس you know again استخدم انا هالكلمه يمكن هي unfair to a lot of people، بس في امريكا السيستم is very sophisticated. ما بدك ناس سطحيين اللي بس they're coming at it from the point انه حتى لو بدك تروح على private practice eventually in the middle of it doesn't matter. You cannot show that. You have to have a sophisticated story that you're sharing with people. Why you did research is not to improve your CV. You did research because you know you're curious, you're inquisitive, you wanted to do X, Y, and Z. هاي السكيلز احنا ما بنتعلمها في بلادنا وما بنعرف كيف نحكي عنها، ما بنعرف how to translate it. So it's extremely important انك to change the way you think لانه the way you think projects when you meet people. Some of these people have been interviewing students for more than 30 years. They can see through you very easily. And we get always this question, I did everything right, I didn't match after doing 10 interviews. Typically it has to do with this concept. you recite your CV or you recite what you did in the interview. You don't project who you are, what you've done, and why you've done what you've done. So the first step is always change how you think about things and think about it from a journey career perspective, not just like putting a piece by piece. لأنه هذا كله بيبين في الانترفيوز وفي personal statement وفي الابليكيشن etc.
في معنا أحمد طيبي. Are you still here? I don't know if he's anyway. Abdullah, you want to have a closing point?
الكلوزنج بوينت تاعتي انه ما تستقلوا بحالكم. خريجين الاردن لما تنعطى لهم الفرصه بامريكا بيبدعوا. اذا بدك تخصص معين جو فور ات، اشتغل له. زي ما حكيت لكم انا بعرف IMGs بكل التخصصات باحسن المستشفيات. ما تسمع لاي حدا بده يحبطك، ما حدا يحكي لك انه لا وكذا. كلنا تخيل كل واحد اردني او من بلادنا طلع على امريكا، سمع كميه الاحباطات انه لا ومش لا وبيطلع لك وما بيطلع لك، وزمان كانت سهله وهلا صارت صعبه وكذا. جزء منه مزبوط، بس هذا مش معناته انه مستحيل. بدك عندك هدف اشتغل عليه. ultimately البوزيشنز بامريكا، بس معلومه، في شورتج رهيب بالاطباء بامريكا، وهلا عم بيحاولوا تباس قوانين بالكونغرس انه يزيدوا اعداد البوزيشنز. وبتوقعوا يعني انا اللي كنت اتليست لاني كنت اسمعها لما كنت خريج بال 2015 يحكي لك امريكا سكرت بال 2010 كان في، بس هلا صارت صعبه. لا، في نقص هائل، الفرص موجوده، اشتغل على حالك، سكورز، كونكشنز. اذا بصح لك ريسيرش ممتاز. اي تخصص بدك اياه بدك تشتغل له، مش سهل، بس اذا بتشتغل صح بتحصله. و good luck.
شكرا عبد الله. وانا بالنسبه لي اللي بدي احكيه انه وهي كنت حكيتها بويبينارز قبل هيك، اللي هي write your own story. You don't have to follow step anyone else. Each one is different. Each one has his own, like, you know, strength point and weaknesses and limitations. So واحد فلان عمل سمعتوا قصة عبد الله أو سمعتوا قصة أحمد المصري. I want to do the same. They have different circumstances than you have right now. So try to write your own narrative and create your own story. And eventually, when you apply to the match, this is like the same thing what Ahmed said, is going to show up that you're someone who, like, yeah, dedicated his time and effort to do this. And you're going to, like, you know, pick up your fruit at the end. The second point is, please change your perspective of how you look into research in the US. Then don't be kind of just superficial and look at it as this is gonna, you know, a bridge that's gonna take me into research, into residency spot. However, this is a skill or like investment in time and effort and money to improve yourself on a different aspect. Your personality, your critical thinking, your ability to analyze things around you, how to be professional with others, especially when you are present like in a very, you know, good place, and like you will start connecting with people. Beside that, you will build your own, you know, at the scientific part of it, you have like more skills and understanding research and writing and all this stuff, and you're going to be better in your field as well. And just so think about it as a long-term investment. So I guess if you get this message out of this webinar, I think we probably did a great job. بحب أشكر أحمد المصري وعبد الله الزغل وراجا زغلول وسيد السير for all their effort or their time joining the webinar. وبحب أشكركم كلكم وجودكم هون معنا. صراحة impressive إنه we had 100 participants. I think maybe we have more if we don't have a limit. This is gonna, you know, give us an idea that, you know, more and more people are interested in this. You can reach out to us, any one of us, you know, on Facebook or email, I guess. Inshallah, no, yani, we'll be more than willing to help anyone.
Thanks, Rami, for putting this together. Saraha, it's not easy, I know. Busy life, so it's not easy. So thanks for putting this together.
My pleasure. طيب يعطيكم العافيه، شكرا وشكرا للجميع.